white people know, or the Europeans know, that the black male has the capability in the sperm to annihilate their whole race because their genes are recessive. So that white supremacy is also partially based on that. And I wanted to know, what was your opinion of that theory, suppressed theory about white supremacy?
Well, I'm familiar with Dr. Welson's theory, or Crest theory. It is part of the answer. The other part of the answer is really in the rise of Europe and the insecurity of Europe in the face of the vast number of people in the world that are not European. Nature plays weird tricks. Most of the resources that's needed to turn capital over and to turn the wheels of Western industry, most of the resources are in the lands of non-European people. And for the Europeans to continue to take these resources free of charge, continue to rape these lands, or to continue to get it cheap, they have to go through a motion of assuming that the people have no ability to develop this to themselves, although the Japanese have proved them wrong on this point, because 200 years ago, the Japanese didn't even have a good wheelbarrow, and look at them now. It also has to deal with the maintenance of a concept of color prejudice that started in the 15th and the 16th century, the assumption that there was something special about color, and the European has made a virtue out of a physical defect, the absence of color.
Young lady standing in front.
Okay, my question goes to Dr. Clarke also. I'm listening to your speech and I enjoyed it very much. I'm a Jamaican. I've been living here in the United States for exactly a year, 7 months, 2 weeks. And I couldn't help but wonder why you seem to almost write Jamaica off as a lost cause. In the sense that if Marcus Garvey was to come to Jamaica at this point in time, he would probably be stoned. There are no sympathizers to Marcus Garvey in Jamaica. I am, as I would like to describe myself, a budding Pan-Africanist. Teaching which I've learned back home. Marcus Garvey is a national hero back home. Musa Baruka, the Dub poet, is a Pan-Africanist. Many of our musicians, young people. I mean, there is a change in faith in Jamaica, which I felt you omitted by just referring to probably a traditionalist, a strong traditionalist back home, as opposed to a younger generation and change in faith.
I can understand you taking exception. I've lived in Jamaica, and I was in Jamaica only a few weeks ago at a conference on Marcus Garvey. I still think Jamaica is the most stratified of all the Caribbean nations along color and class lines. The powerful, entrenched, class conscious and color conscious Jamaicans who stopped Marcus Garvey the first time is more powerful now than ever. Marcus Garvey is a national hero, and yet you cannot read books about Marcus Garvey. It's not in Jamaican public libraries. There's no course on Marcus Garvey in a single college in Jamaica. There's no primer on the life of Marcus Garvey. What kind of national hero is this? And what kind of nation with black consciousness would elect a white man from Boston as prime minister? Gentlemen. Yes, sir. sir.
I have two questions. At one point in time, I read that Young Elijah Muhammad was a lieutenant under Marcus Garvey's time. Is this true?
You know me?
Either one of them.
That is correct. Before, when he was still a minister of the Baptist Church, he was a lieutenant in Garvey's movement. When he became in his own movement, when he was calling himself what at the time at 128th Street, he was still in the movement. He left the movement when he went to the Moorish science. And after Moorish science, then he established his version of Islam.
Second question, would you say that he carried on the same thing?
No, he carried some aspect. The economic aspect was basically an idea from Garvey. I would say, other than that, it was a rugged departure.
Thank you.
In Harold Cruz's latest book, he talks about the development of the Black political convention movement of the 1970s. What do you see as the potentials of a black political party in the U.S., and what do you think are some of the problems? Either one.
Look, I'm familiar with Harold Cruz. We grew up together intellectually after the war. Harold Cruz is an uncanny genius in choosing good titles for books and writing full books behind the titles. Both of his books are misleading. This one is called Plural But Equal. Interesting title. But we were not brought to America to be equal. It is a plural society.
I'm not in favor of
All whites are not equal. Let's get something straight about this country. This country was found as a haven for free white Protestant males, middle class and up, those who agreed with the prevailing political status quo and who owned property. Everybody else in the country is second. Catholic, Jews, everybody. Second to that, women too. Women got to vote day before yesterday. No, the convention movement really started in the 19th century.
Right, I'm familiar with that, but I'm talking about in terms of the 70s. Do you think there's potential for a black political party? What do you think that potential is, and what do you think would be the problems involved?
I haven't decided whether it's even a necessity. I think a black political force, the unity of blacks on a political purpose, blacks knowing what they want from the political structure and unifying to get it is far more important than a separate black political party. A separate party, if you think will do any good, but a political force is essential to all time.
Do you think the Black Caucus is what you're talking about when you say that?
Well, the Black Caucus is a minimal thing. It's not big enough to be considered on the same level.
There was I feel slighted in this book. He's always accustomed to give John and myself hell in all his books. And he isn't cursing us in this book. I wonder, John, if in his old days he's getting reformed. I guess no one knew me until Harold Cruz mixed me up with The Voice and John and others. And but of course Harold have never had a new idea. He has other people's idea and criticize it. And he's done the same in this book. But a convention, just take reality. Let us say America went real crazy. and voted for Jesse Jackson. I mean, we all went mad. Black, white, technicolor, and rainbow. Who is going to be the head of the army? Who is going to run Wall Street? Who is going to be the Secretary of State, etc., etc.? It will make a damn difference if Jesse's grandmother was the president. You're still going to have capitalism, rugged and all kind of it. And if Jesse lived to pass the Electoral College, you see, you forget that Americans don't vote for a president. They go through an exercise of futility because it's going to be the Electoral College that decide who's going to be the president. 3 times or 4 times, American popular vote was reversed. Don't think that America will kill John F. Kennedy, Roosevelt, Lincoln, and others, and won't kill Jesse. I think Jesse knows that he will win, just making a position. He wants to go to convention with his strength. He wants to be able to negotiate for a few ambassadors, a few, let's face it, and get a few dollars for himself. And I'm with him. Get some money, Jesse. You got a problem to support.
I'm a practical and impractical dreamer on the situation. I want Jesse to get so many votes, they have to throw it in the house. Then when they throw it in the house, I know they're going to steal it from him. And the nature of the stealing will be a political lesson for all of us.
There was a lady in the back who had a question. Okay, well, let me go to the back and then I'll go over there.
I read that in Africa, many centuries ago, that it was one was respected based on their black, especially the black race, that it was considered stupid to be black, and that they looked up to the black. But Britain said the young girls who paint themselves with black hair, they will never cry. What caused us as a people to become ashamed about black?
White images, starting with the Bible, white Jesus, gave us a disrespect for the black father in the home, missionary concepts of color, propaganda, caused us to lose faith in ourselves. I've seen people in Africa, black and proud and beautiful, in the Sudan, and I've seen some blue black people. Most beautiful blackness I've ever seen in my life. Velvety looking blue. No apologies. When Nkrumah came to power, I was head of a culture unit of the anti-poverty program. I got the film and I got the tape and I showed it to my students. I said, look, he's addressing the world. He's speaking to the United Nations. He had even combed his hair. He no bleaching cream. He's black and he like it that way. In the last public speech of James Baldwin at Cornell, a white student asked the white male student, after all the years that you're famous now with money, aren't you tired of people discriminating against you because of your blackness? Isn't it a problem to you? He said, no problem to me. But I'm worried because it's still a problem to you. And he said, I like it the way it is. I wear it well. I dig it. But if you can't understand it, then that's your problem.
I think in the Tanzania Gazette, there's a nice thing. When Tanzania got independence, there was one British woman who was in the Tanganyika legislature during the British administration for quite some time, and she couldn't stand the idea to see her beloved Tanganyika go to the natives. And so the Tanganyika Gazette did a little comic strip. They show a missionary man come with his British hat, his short pants, and his high socks and boots, coming up on the shore. And then a little missionary boy running in on the shore. An African woman in her house peeping through the window, and a little African boy playing with the missionary son. And the caption said, Ngulu, I tell you never to play with your dinner. It was to show the the attitude of Europeans of how they thought about Africans. But the thought remained the same, but the African has still regained his land. Another caption is, and I'm this here, but we like to use Bro and Nancy stories before they became Uncle Remus stories. A missionary arrived because this is one of our worst problems. They said that the Africans ate the missionaries and we didn't eat them, and that was our biggest mistake. But it's not too late to start eating them. But this missionary came and he tried to convert everything he could see. And he didn't get any Africans because Africans by now had started to get back on the track. But there was a lion coming up who had been wounded, and you know, a wounded lion in spark can't catch anything. And so the lion was coming up like this, and the missionary started to pray, "Oh Lord, I don't know what I'm going to do because I promised you I've come here to civilize these people and to bring them to your faith." And so just then the lion came, watched the missionary, and stood down with his paws up in his place and started, "Ooh." And the missionary said, "Oh Lord, I want to change something. I didn't get a human being here, but I got a lion who is praying to you." And the lion stopped and watched the missionary and said, "I don't know what you're asking the Lord for, but I'm thanking the Lord for my first dinner."
Someone on the side here had a question? Yes, sir.
Excuse me, Dr. Benton, I'd like to ask you a question related to education. I think everyone in the room, if not them, and the children, go to schools in New York State. And I believe New York State Department of Education mandates or dictates the curriculum taught in the various schools throughout the state. And my question to you is there any formal course or courses given with regard to Afro-American studies in the social studies of our schools?
In some schools, you can still have, but it's dependent upon the teacher. And you know, even at the college level, there is such a thing as a curriculum committee. That's the fellows that chop up your course or say it can't go through. But nobody can stop me from teaching what I want under any title. I mean, I could take a course called Restrictions Not to Say African and teach Africa in it, because I use one of the other names for Africa. And I will speak about it. It's like, excuses are out of mode after the 60s at least, 69 and so forth, when youngsters went to the street, when the youngsters in Cornell took up guns against the New York State policemen, when youngsters all over, when they burned the universities, and they have to get back to that. You know, I got to say, I probably won't be here. I probably won't be here at Hofstra, sitting down today if young black people didn't burn the place. I mean, let's face it. I mean, we're brilliant. John is a brilliant brother, and I'm no slouch. But we wouldn't have been here. We were there before 1969. We had to pay people. We were paying at 310 Lenox Avenue with Richard Moore. We used to pay people 25 cents to come upstairs to hear the lecture. That was a lot of money. 25 cents we had 3-course dinner for the divine. Yeah. And we had such people as Langston Hughes, John, Richard Moore, and I could go on and go on. And for entertainment, we had a bit of a Skylar. Then she was a child genius before she went out of mind. And then all those different things. And no one, people didn't want to come. We had to literally kidnap people and carry them upstairs to listen to their own history. So it was never a time we had Dr. Seifert and his institute. There were a number of academies, even J.A. Rogers writing in the Pittsburgh Courier and other people. There was never a time when we were short of telling our people our history. Of course, you know, Marcus Garvey was loaded with, when, if I tell you, J. Philip Randolph, all those fellows were with Garvey. Randolph were with Garvey. And a number of fellows who turned the other side, became Norman Rockwell, socialists, Marxists, and all kind of things like that, were with Garvey. It doesn't say that they didn't know. If those men stayed with Garvey, you see, they went to look for a better bread. Like most of us with our PhDs. I remember when John was teaching in Hayuak, literally in little housing project in the little room there. I was lecturing in front of a chock full of nuts on 125th Street and 7th Avenue with a ladder, and Thursday, Friday, and Saturday and Sunday afternoon. Coming from Teachers College as a professor teaching on the corner. my members of my own family won't speak to me. John McDowell, members of his family would speak to his wife, his first wife would speak to him. We were crazy. So I'm saying, if we put our mind to it, and I know, let's face it, we don't run New York City Public School. And people don't think for others as they think for themselves. It's a reality. Don't expect that other people want to leave their personal interests for yours.
Just a very short comment, because there are a lot of folks who question. Okay, well, don't you be equally as long with it, because we can't hear him. Okay.
Very specifically, Dr. Ben, when I was a child, they called social studies geography. And as a youngster, studying geography, Africa was known to be far removed in a very negative state. My point is that, as a youngster, I had to fantasize about geography, because all they taught was white history. Now today, and I think that if everybody here has any inkling as to what the New York State Board of Education is supposed to be doing, and they have representatives for regions, I think the community, if they're concerned and interested in having a curriculum instituted or implemented in this respect to schools, then the Regent people are the people to write to.
Yeah, but if you have gone and seen a Regent meeting, I guess you remember a fellow named Clarke, not Dr. John Henry. I'm talking about the other Clarke. The Kenneth Clarke. That's another Clarke, another era. But he told you the Board of Regents had meetings to which he didn't know, and which he couldn't attend because the places they had it is for whites only. I don't think they could do it too easily with Alice Sample, but they got techniques. The reality, again, we got to re-emphasize. We're in a system that is not for our benefit. As John said in the beginning, this system is an extension of Europe. And it's Judeo-Christian in background, what they call Judeo-Christian. And it functions for that. It's Judeo-Christian, Greco-Romano, and nothing that, anything that doesn't fit in that will have to fight and constantly fight. And as John was starting, Europeans are not racist against Africans alone. They're racist against Europeans. French people don't like to live. I mean, if you're Italian, you move in a French neighborhood, it is hell. If you're German, you move in. And then remember, let's face the fact. When you say Jewish, what are you talking about? They're black Jews and they're brown Jews and yellow Jews. But when you say white Jews are white. In white good society, you doubt it? Move in a white Jewish neighborhood, or a white Italian neighborhood, or a white Greek neighborhood, and see if all whites don't move. That's it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ben.
Yes, sir. Speak just a little louder, please.
When was the recorded on education system in Africa? And can you explain to me why was the sign of peace? What is not only white, but why that changed to the opposite that you have?
No one knows when was the first day of education in the continent of Africa, because you're talking about 11.3 million square miles. But the oldest record of the Nile Valley, Egypt, and Egypt wasn't the first, by the way, is Pwanit, now called Somalia, Kenya, and Uganda used to be the old nation of Pwanit, which later the Jews called Punt in the allegorical story. Our records, we have archaeological records of hieroglyphs, which shows writing that goes back to about 25,000 writings that we could decipher now. If you go back to the Grimaldis and others, you have other writings there, the picture writings. If you go into the Tassili Mountains with the fresco there, you have writing, the symbolic writing that goes 450,000 years ago that made Adam and Eve look sick. So then, we don't know when education started. We know, though, that the Grand Lodge of Saqqara, and Saqqara started with at least the third dynasty with Imhotep and Zusa, that at that place they had what they call the lodge, the Grand Lodge, the temple, where education, but remember, education must have been way before that, because since a man had to stay 40 years in school after entering school at age 7, being circumcised, and then started, at 40 years later you get your priesthood designation. Instead of a PhD, you get the name of priest. And you know all the subjects there were. So it was, I could say, education in Africa started before Adam and Eve. There was no Adam and Eve mentioned any place when education, because Adam and Eve started with the Jewish Hebrew, a concept coming out of the Sanhedrin. And you don't have no Hebrew before Abraham, and you don't have no Sanhedrin until 700 BC. So even before the concept of Adam and Eve, Africans had writing and education.
Okay, why is the Ramadan, which,
Or the Ramadan?
why does that change too? Why does that change?
Hitler moved it to a swastika. If you go to the museum, the Metropolitan, no. The Museum of Natural History at 79 to 81st Street on 8th Avenue or Central Park West, and the second floor section called the Hall of Men in Africa, you will see the Togolese clothing. You see Gramadans all over it. And what is called an eagle, which they now call a German eagle. Saint Maurice of Aragon, that became the patron saint of Germany, this African from Togo, who went to Rome and then was sent from Rome to be bishop of Germany and then murdered, wore the Togolese eagle and the Gramadan, and their Gramadan at the feet of Buddha, the Gramadan all over. Gramadan is the old of 40,000 years. The difference is that Hitler turned the legs around, that's all. But what they call the swastika is Hitler's copy, because Germany under Kaiser Wilhelm had colonized Togo and the Togolese brought that symbol there. That's where the Germans got what they call the swastika.
Okay, question all the way in the back, Mr. Poe. Speak loud, Mr. Poe.
I recently did some research in Nigeria and it's like anything with San Rico and I was wondering, it seems to me that Marcus Garvey and Julius Nyerere had similar beliefs of self-sufficiency in Africa for Africa. I was wondering, how can we as Africans, people of African descent in America, make these efforts manifest here?
I got to disagree with you forcefully. Not Julius Nyerere. Julius Nyerere does believe in integration. Marcus Messiah Garvey would have died rather than integrate with anyone other than an African woman. It was inconsistent with Garvey to think of cross-mating. You could call it racist or not. He believed that the survival of his people, if you're going to do that, do it at a later date. But he said, you first have to consolidate your forces before you could start talking about integration. Nyerere barred me from coming to the, what, the 7-pack they call it? The 6-pack in Tanzania, because my speech was a speech supporting Garvey. By the way, I was barred from Guinea by Secretary for the same speech supporting Marcus Garvey. Both of those men said that they did not stand for any such philosophy of race. So I don't, not Julius Nyerere, who kneels down in front of the Pope and kissed the ring.
As far as economic self-sufficiency for Africa and for Africa for African neighborhood, as far as integration, I didn't research that part of Julius Nyerere being an integrator.
Julius Nyerere. Then look at the cabinet. Look at the role of the Indians in Tanzania. Look and see if in Tanzania, if you go up to the post office, if an Indian can still walk in front of you and get served.
Okay, we're going to take about 2 additional questions. Gentleman sitting in the front.
Yes, I'd like to address this to both Dr. Ben and Dr. Horner. I was just wondering, when looking at Isis and Osiris and Horus, the story of Isis and Osiris and Horus, and looking at the Bible as it is now, we see some similarities, but there are also some inconsistencies in the current Bible. I was just wondering, could you point out some of the inconsistencies and also give us a point of reference which we could look at as far as periodicals are concerned?
This is solely Dr. Ben's answer. This is his particular area of research.
One of the major inconsistencies with the Mary and Jesus and Joseph take off of Isis, I'm using the Western usage of the name, Isis or Horus and Osiris, is number one. The West has used the word Virgo to mean hymen. And in the ancient Africans of Egypt and elsewhere, when they spoke of the Immaculate Conception, they didn't mean that a woman who had no sexual intercourse and that her hymen was not broken. The Immaculate Conception was a clean thought, a clean person. For example, a woman who got pregnant never touched another man but the man that made her pregnant, and up to the delivery never touched another man but the man that made her pregnant, had an Immaculate Conception. And she gave birth to a virgin child. It has nothing to do if she had 30 children before. As a matter of fact, they cleaned up a little in the book. They said Jesus and his brothers and sisters. You can't be the human phallus and the woman vagina. That we have to be ashamed of it and can't even talk about it. And in those days, you go in all the temples and you see goddess naked, You see God naked, the God of fertility. You see goddess giving birth even to the sun from her vagina, and the sun coming out in the morning and going back. The Western concept of the Romanized concept of this is even to deny Jesus the act of manhood. 23 years old, and he don't know what sex is in a polygamous country.
Just give us a periodical, which is the use as a point of reference.
Oh yes, there are a lot of. I think you could read Anacalypsis, a 2-volume work, Anacalypsis, Anacalypsis, by Sir Godfrey Higgins, 2 volumes. Man and His Gods by Homer W. Smith. The 16 Crucified Saviors by Percy Graves. Bible Myths and Their Parallels in Other Religions by Thomas Downes. Christianity Before Jesus by John Jackson. Also by Annie Besant. There's equally 2 people who wrote that. I mean, 2 different books by the same name. Take out the 13-volume works by Sir James Fraser called The Golden Bow, and read the Proceedings of the Nicene Conference of Bishops, because it is at the Proceedings of the Nicene Conference of Bishops in 325, ordered by Constantine, the Roman Emperor, that Christianity was denuded of its sexuality and given a Roman connotation of, but you got to remember the background. When these things are written, what was Greece at the time? The Greek soldiers went to the battlefield and lived there. And Greek men would bet, the generals would bet, married 35 years, and they would bet that the wife still was untouched. Why they need a wife for? They have a boy on the field. You got to remember the background, what the Romans were thinking of. Look at Michelangelo's painting. Michelangelo, look at painting of men. Any man in here is small. Our Dean here has got a good bit, and he'll be miniature. Michelangelo got these big men and penis about a ½ inch. Look, go to the Sistine Chapel and see the mind of Michelangelo. And then you get an idea. These are the men that projected the pictures, the image. Look at the life of Pope Julius. His romantic life with his boyfriends.
Young lady in the front.
I'd like to direct my questions to Dr. Ben. You had spoken previously on the economy of Black Afro-Americans. We do realize that there are flaws in the economy, and I'd like for you to elaborate on what you feel we can do to rectify those flaws.
You can't do a thing in American economy to rectify it. I can't, and I know practically everybody in this room. Even Bosky can't. And he dropped 9 million one day. There's a fellow dropped 50 million one day in Florida and went and shot everybody he could.
We'll get to the lesson, because we're into something we need to go deep into, because